Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Fires upfield into the end zone, and it's caught. Jelani Woods, touchdown! INDY! A 43-point night for Tyrese Halliburton.
How do you like that, partner?
Galloway drives all the way to the hole, throws it up, got it! Indiana's got their first lead of this contest.
I mean, that's a goddamn winner right there.
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hello, everybody. Welcome aboard. It is Tuesday, July 18th. Thanks a lot for joining us here for Indiana Sports Beat Radio from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios. Appreciate you. 2 days short of Never Lose Hoop. Don't forget, here at the Golf Club at Eagle Point, make sure that if you have not signed up, you do so. Become a player. Become a player. We always use players. Indiana Sports Beat Radio, don't forget, powered by Andy Moore Honda. Just go to andymorehonda.com to get more to your door in new and used vehicles, and the best in new and used vehicles, and Endeavor Hospitality, the family of restaurants in and around the Bloomington area. Great places like BB's Market and Chop Shop, located right next door, where you can find the best in meats, steaks, etc., etc. How's everybody doing? Welcome, John Boy, back to the program after a hiatus.
I know. I'm glad to see you're back in the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios.
We've been here. We haven't had you. This is all. But
I'm glad
yeah,
you're back too.
Good.
It's always nice.
It's always lovely. Former Northwestern football players hire an attorney over the hazing case. Brent Venables criticizes Deion Sanders' roster building approach. The SEC's Greg Sankey decries the race to the bottom with the state of the NIL laws. I find it so funny anytime anything comes out of the SEC whining about anything to do with paying players. They've been doing it better than anybody for years. Shut up. Let's see. Oh, and my favorite yet. Not that we don't have enough bad basketball. The NCAA now is going to come out with a women's NIT. So there's that. It has nothing to do with the women about bad basketball. It's just there was
already a women's NIT because Indiana played in it and won it whenever Tyra Buss was on campus. Is it a different kind of women's NIT?
Yeah, it's the women's basketball invitational tournament. Here's what you need to know. It's a 32-team postseason tournament. It will be funded and owned by the NCAA. It'll begin play in 2024. It raises the number of NCAA-funded postseason spots for Division I women's basketball teams to 100, the same number as the men's team, which is very important because everything has to be the exact same. I'm being facetious. But details about the tournament selection process, bracketing principles, and host sites will be announced later. But yeah, we will have to dig into that a little bit more, find out what the difference is. It's the women's basketball invitational tournament. So
it's not the NIT.
No, it's WBIT.
So it's kind of like the equivalent for the men's side of the CBI, it sounds like.
Well, no, I think this might take the tournament.
Okay.
The WNIT is privately owned, by the way. The Women's National Invitation.
I did remember that.
This is so the NCAA has control over it because they own the men's NIT.
Yeah.
This will begin in 2024. It's just like the men's NIT. That's the problem. They don't own it. They simply don't own it. What does that mean for women's basketball? Well, according to a piece in The Athletic, there was one of the findings from the Kaplan report, which was review of gender equity issues between the men's and women's basketball tournaments. One of the findings was that the NCAA supports more postseason opportunities for men's teams than women's teams. When women's programs fail to earn a berth in the NCAA tournament, they often turn down the NIT because the college has to fund its own participation. There you go. So the WBIT will help rectify that situation. So it's basically going to be a secondary tournament that they do not have to fund. The individual teams will not have to fund. It'll be interesting to see if the quality of teams that enter the WBIT on the men's side, the CBI is the third choice among programs after the NCAA tournament and the NIT. The association with the NCAA theoretically would make the WBIP more desirable than the WNIT. If you can keep up, you need a scorecard. But as we learned in 2021, merely being an NCAA event doesn't guarantee that participating teams will be supporting it in a way that ensures best possible basketball. So we'll see. We'll see what some of the women's coaches think. We'll see how it turns out. But it sounds like it's given them a better opportunity to where they don't have to fund it. And that makes sense. How's everybody doing? Hitting us up on the Andy Moore Honda hotline. Fred, Bob, Pete, Ryan, Mike, Kent, John, and Dwayne. Why is Pete in Shakopee still? I thought he was out of that godforsaken country.
Maybe he's making his final preparations, or maybe he's back getting some things that he left behind that he couldn't grab on his way out.
Very possible. The trickle-down effect of college football realignment. We've talked about, mentioned some of the rivalries that are going away. Oklahoma State, the Bedlam series. And as that one ends, another one that has gone away possibly could be getting rekindled with Texas and Texas A&M. Now, I wonder, is that going to be the case? Now that they have the opportunity and they're back in the same conference again, will they rekindle that rivalry between Texas and Texas A&M? Because then you also have a protected rivalry of Texas and Oklahoma. Now, since they only play 8 conference games in the SEC, how are they going to schedule that? Very interesting. Ohio State, Penn State, is that going to remain on the schedule? Pretty sure that Michigan and Ohio State will, and Indiana, Purdue, but it's not like the rest of the nation is waiting with bated breath on Indiana, Purdue. Does it create some new rivalries with UCLA and USC joining the Big Ten? Of course, you have their rivalry on its own, but some new conference rivalries. It's going to be interesting to see.
By the way, I do have a list of the protected rivalries with the new schedule format that will begin next year. Ohio State, the only protected rivalry they have is with Michigan. Penn State is the only school
without one,
all 16 that doesn't have a protected game.
They don't have a natural rival.
I know, isn't that something?
But neither does who's Michigan's. I mean, not Michigan. Who's Maryland's and who's Rutgers?
I believe they're protected with each other. Yeah, they are.
That's funny. That's funny.
Same with UCLA and USC. They're
that's
with each other.
Well, that's legit though. That's a legit deal. Rutgers and Maryland is not exactly a game that's gone down in the annals of football history. Yeah. Man, I can't wait till Rutgers and Maryland play this week. Woo!
Well, manufactured rivalry. They don't even play for a trophy. They need their own trophy to at least make it official.
Yeah, they do. It's called the Toilet Bowl.
Well, give them a plunger.
Hey, that's not a bad idea. Hey, and appropriately, me wearing my Los Angeles T-shirt today.
There you go. And speaking of Los Angeles and UCLA, they're the UCLA is the only team from the West Coast that Indiana will face next season. They won't even have to travel out west. UCLA will be visiting Memorial Stadium in the first year of conference expansion with those two teams.
Well, I guess that's good for fans who don't want to have to travel.
Yeah. Oh, we're talking about Pete earlier. Apparently we were right about him getting some last minute stuff at his place in Shakopee.
Shakopee.
What a great name, by the way. I know apparently he was ready to get out of there, but I love saying Shakopee.
Well, there's nothing that's going to prevent you from saying it going forward. How's everybody doing today? Appreciate everybody joining us, no matter how you're doing so, whether it's by radio, our good friends down on the river, 97.7 ESPN, the Ref in Evansville, up in the region, the voice of the region, WJOB, 1230 AM, 104.7 FM, and over in Fort Wayne, 1380 The Fan. How are things going up there? Hope you guys are having a great day. Looking forward to talking to Mike DeCourcy here today. There's just so many things to get to. I've got to change that. WBIT. I had WNIT written down.
Of course, they've got to make things as confusing as possible.
Let's see. Who was it that daggone it. I think it's Brent Venables.
Yep.
That was giving some grief to Deion Sanders on the way he has been building his roster, but Oklahoma coach Brent Venables, that is. He's not a fan of how it's gone on, but I don't think that Deion cares. We're another year in establishing our standards, our culture, and our values. That matters. A year ago, I challenged the guys. I wasn't like Deion that gave guys a bunch of pink slips. Hello. Left those are right out there.
Break.
I gave guys 12 months of grace to go with class. Woo, throwing it out there. How's everybody doing? We've got lots more coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Mike DeCourcy will be joining us, Course Chronic Hoosier as well. And we'll get to all that and much more right after this.
We'll be right back to the golf club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
If you're in the
All right.
All right.
All right. All right. All right. Go learn today. All right, 1 minute, Jimbo. I'm sure Mike will be on shortly. All right, 30 seconds.
Off the Square in Bloomington near Cabello is locally owned and operated by Endeavor Hospitality Group. Launched from a previous staple in Bloomington, the former Function Brewing, Metalworks Brewing Company is the culmination of a passion for beer, food, and custom metal art. Check out their custom growlers. Metalworks Brewing Company has an updated menu, new brews, and will be offered in all Endeavor Hospitality restaurants. Come taste with Dr. Hops' Brewing. Metalworks Brewing Company. Bring your passion and your thirst.
This segment is brought to you by Southern Stone Restaurant. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back. It is Tuesday, July 18th. Appreciate you being here. Don't forget our good friends at Southern Stone Restaurant, located right next door to Feast on Patterson and Rogers. And welcome in the great Mike DeCourcy. How are you, sir?
I'm well, Jim. How are you this week?
I cannot complain. No one still wants to listen to it. I'm doing just fine, sir. Good to be back to see your face and looking through. Always fun to have things to talk about. Greg Sankey talking, of course, but the NCAA creating a new women's basketball invitational tournament to even things up with the men. I did not realize that the NIT was not owned by the NCAA, the women's NIT. There's so many, boy, you got to need a scorecard for all this stuff because it's now the women's NIT is now the WBIT. It's going to be crazy, but it's where they had to fund their own ventures in the NIT. I did not realize that. So,
yeah, I'll be honest with you. I paying so little attention to the NITs in general.
I was going to say, not that I care about either one. I said, just like we need more bad basketball. Just what we need, more bad basketball. I was talking about this the other day with the possibility, and this kind of plays right into it. There was talk of the potential of growing the men's NCAA basketball tournament to support the 25% of your the amount of members that you have, which is crazy because I'm like, man, there's not 4 more teams that need to be in the men's NCAA tournament, much less 24 or however many, whatever the number is. They're not there. They have their chance throughout the season, and it's not like we're fighting to get 15 more teams in. There may be 1 or 2 that people are like, well, that they could argue about, and you could argue it either way. And I would give that one up, but it's 1 or 2 teams. It's not 20.
I will claim and have claimed a higher level of expertise on this subject than most, because those who follow my work know that I do the brackets projections for Fox, for FS1, for Fox Sports. And so I know what is, I know what's on the other side of that line. And I know how much interest there is in establishing that line and what good it does for college basketball that line exists. We already have a very large number of people in the general media with very big microphones and very loud voices that have, mostly for their own convenience, but not without impact, declared the college basketball regular season to be irrelevant. There is a lot of that talk out there. They call it a 1-month sport. Again, I believe the genesis of that is it by declaring it so, they are free to ignore it and they don't have to worry about it. And it's one less thing that they can care about and still maintain their audience. But as I said, that's not without impact. Some people will listen to that nonsense and not follow NCAA basketball November, December, January, February, and then maybe the first week of March. They may not follow it because somebody with a big microphone tells them, oh, it doesn't matter. So by then expanding the tournament to this 25% figure, you are basically verifying everything they say. Because if you go to 96 teams or 90 some teams or whatever, then the 25% number figures out to around 92, 91 or 92, depending on whether you want to round up or round down. But obviously, mathematically, then the next natural step would be 96. So if you go to that, almost everyone who can bounce a ball 3 times without knocking it off their foot is in the tournament. So you are at that point saying, you know what, all those people who say this are right, because no one who can play at all is getting left out at that point. And it would damage not only the NCAA tournament, which is it's the best television property in sports. And the reason I say that, I mean, maybe the Super Bowl, but okay, but let's give the Super Bowl number 1 and then the NCAA tournament number 2, because what the NCAA tournament draws in after the regular season standing at let's say the regular season interest is set at a 5, okay, a 5 on a 10-point scale. The NCAA basketball tournament then takes it to 8 or 9 in terms of interest, of public interest. If you set the Major League Baseball regular season at a 5, the postseason in baseball maybe takes it to a 6 or a 7. It doesn't exponentially change the interest in the sport. So, but the NCAA basketball tournament does that. So you would be potentially damaging the value of that product, the interest in that product, because you have this chemistry that already exponentially raises the interest, and you would definitely be damaging the regular season because it wouldn't really matter. Nothing would really matter at that point. How much does seeding matter when you have a 96-team tournament? How much does getting in matter when you have a 96-team tournament? The teams that are fighting and scrapping. We watched Rutgers on the Big Ten Network last year fight for every inch, and they probably got a raw deal. It was out of 211 brackets or something like that. Around 200 of them at the bracket matrix had Rutgers in, and the one bracket that counted didn't. So one can say that they got a raw deal, but one can also say, hey, they blew a 15-point lead at Minnesota with like 2 minutes left, and if that doesn't happen, they're in. So you can at least, you can't say that they weren't qualified to be in, but you can also say that they weren't a true NCAA tournament team. They weren't a team that in every single NCAA tournament would have belonged. And then they didn't get in. That happens almost never. That like once every 5 years tops, where the committee leaves out somebody that absolutely belongs. At this point, it's most of the time they're just choosing one or the other that kind of sort of does or doesn't belong, and then they put their choice in. And as it happened this year with Rutgers, as happened last year with Texas A&M, they made a choice that the preponderance of interested parties didn't believe was the right choice. But in neither case would any of us have argued you absolutely left out an NCAA tournament team. You just chose a different one that kind of sort of did or didn't belong.
Yeah, the men's basketball tournament is special because it's special.
Yes.
There's a reason why it's special. And if they keep screwing with it, they're going to take away what makes it special. And it's one of the last things that is still what I would consider special. It draws people that normally would not watch the sport. It will draw an audience that where most of the people are watching college basketball, but it still draws people that normally during the season may not watch a college basketball game. And that happens only for certain things like the Super Bowl, like to talk about special events, but they're only special because they're special. And right. if you take away those ingredients that make them so, well, you're going to take away the speciality of what they bring.
The only thing wrong with the NCAA tournament right now was Mark Emmert's parting gift to college athletics. Well, he left plenty, but one of them was re-upping the contract with Turner CBS to 2024, I think, or 2034, something like that. The $1 billion portion, it was 700, nearly 800 million a year up over the last several years since they signed it in 2010, 2011. They were getting over 700. It will go over $1 billion this year or next. I can't remember which, but either this season or next season, it'll go over $1 billion a year. And then that will be in place for a period of about 7 or 8 years. The reason that's problematic is because if you put it in the market now, a very hot television market for live sports, a property that has the value that we explained before, it would probably do much better than $1 billion a year. That's the only problem. And some of the discussion that I hear about expansion, I believe, is rooted in, well, if we completely change the tournament, maybe we completely blow up this contract and we can completely go in and get more money. That's the only logical thing to do that they're doing with that. But even at that, I don't think that CBS Turner would sit still for that, because they've got a great property on their hands at a good price. And I believe that they would fight very hard, not just, in the market, but maybe beyond that, to keep it. So I don't even know if that's a logical reason to do this. I tell you, the biggest problem I have with this concept of 25% and all of that is you shouldn't change the market, the property that so many millions of people love, because presidents at all these small schools are deciding, well, you know what? If we're in the Division I, we might be able to get in the NCAA tournament. We might be able to get all that publicity, and I'll look great as a president of this small school. No, I mean, we don't need 360 Division I schools. There are not 360 Division I schools. Okay, I don't mean to say that. Like, I'm not excluding anybody. The door is there. You pay the price by sitting out 5 years. Go ahead and do it. But I'm not changing if I were in charge, I'm not changing the NCAA tournament to make it better for you. Why would I do that? That's preposterous. This is a great property for everyone who loves college basketball. The regular season interest is at a good level because of the drive to make it. The early March interest is there, and I can see it in reactions to the brackets that I post and all of that. People care about this stuff. If you make it so easy to get in that 17 and 16 teams are getting in, the interest will go down in that. And then the property itself, the magic of the 16 versus 1 and all of that will go too. The 15 versus 2 upset and all that stuff, which we've had recently, that will all go away if you change the format of the tournament. I can't believe anybody who is smart about college athletics could be serious about this. I know Greg Sankey's a smart guy. I cannot understand why he's advocated for this. It doesn't make any sense other than that one possibility that I talked about getting more money out of the tournament. It just doesn't add up. His proposal, his advocacy based on what happened in the 2022 College World Series, they're not the same sports. They're nothing like each other. College baseball and college basketball are not the same, just as Major League Baseball and the NBA aren't the same. You can have the absolute best baseball player in the world, the absolute best. Nobody's even close to Shohei Ohtani. And the Angels stink. They stink. And they have the best player in the world. You have the best player in the NBA, whoever he is, whether it's Nikola Jokic or LeBron James or whatever, you're good. You may not win it, but you're good because you've got one of the 5. So they are not the same sports. So their postseason should not resemble one another. And hey, if we're going to change college basketball to accommodate what's going on in college baseball, okay, we'll change college baseball. I bet you the people who play and compete and run college baseball, the managers, would love to have a single elimination tournament. Don't you think? I bet they'd love that. Of course not. They don't want that because their pitcher has one bad outing and they're out. The guy throws 3 home run balls and they're done. They don't want that because it doesn't work for their game. It's not the same game. So don't tell me what works in college baseball is going to work in college basketball.
Yeah, Greg Sankey, of course, the commissioner of the SEC, is going to speak on which is best for the SEC, not what's best for college basketball, football, or whatever the case is. Just like the SEC is remaining steadfast with an 8-game college football schedule, which is ridiculous because I don't think you can have a champion if we're not playing the same game. And having conferences play different amounts of games is not the same to me.
You don't think those games against Mercer and the Citadel are challenging the SEC schools sufficiently? You don't think so?
Nah. As long as you beat Vanderbilt and Kentucky, you're in a bowl game, baby.
What really it's hard for me to understand is why ESPN doesn't put more pressure on the SEC to provide the product that an extra SEC game would provide. I don't understand that. Obviously, they have an SEC network. They have the full contract. Another SEC regular season football game would make those contracts more valuable for both sides. I don't understand why they're continuing to avoid that.
We've got to take a break. The great Mike DeCourcy is with us from the Sporting News, and we're back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
It's hard not to pay attention to Julie Ernst.
Yeah, she's really important.
All right, got about 30 seconds.
Now available throughout the Bloomington area is a fresh home-cooked nutritious meal prep that we cook up. The Fresh Fork takes care of all the planning, shopping, and prepping and can even deliver them to your doorstep once a week. That's right, it's the fastest, simplest, and easiest way to avoid decision fatigue. You pick your plan and pick up at BB's Market with no extra charge. So leave the heavy lifting to us and enjoy healthy eating with stocked meals in your fridge. Order online today at thefreshfork.com. Fresh Fork is a proud partner of WOW Network. This segment is brought to you by RE/MAX Advanced Realty, Indie Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Tuesday, July 18th. Thanks a lot for being with us. Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News with me right now, gratefully. Mike, 2024 is when realignment really kind of kicks into gear with Texas and Oklahoma moving to the SEC, UCLA, USC, and the Big Ten. How can the ACC survive? And did even make that statement sounds crazy because the ACC was one of the most venerable basketball conferences and until it wasn't. And it just seems, I'm not saying that it's nothing, but it just, when you add in the football nature of to a conference, the importance, and you have to do that, man, it is just taking it on the chin.
Well, I think that the focus of the media to keep score based on conference television payouts is probably overdone, at least for now. It's definitely overdone to me. Unless and until college athletes become paid employees. And that may happen. I'm not saying it's not going to. We don't know where it's going to go from here. But until that point, the amount of money an athletic department brings in doesn't really change the impact of the results on the field. It like North Carolina is a really important athletic program in NCAA athletics. But how much have they ever accomplished in football? I mean, they're okay. They gave us Lawrence Taylor 40 years ago. They've had some good quarterbacks lately. They've won some games here and there. But you've never seen them in and around the national championship, ever. They've never been in the ballpark of a college football national championship. Not in my lifetime. Maybe like back when Choo Choo Charlie Justice was playing or whatever. I don't know. But not in my lifetime. They've never been a factor. But there's still an extraordinary athletic department that's won championships in men's and women's soccer, obviously basketball. They've been in the Final Four, I believe, in women's basketball. They've been very good at baseball at times. So there's still a really important athletic department, even though they've never been great at football. So I think the first, when people talk about the ACC surviving, there has to be an understanding that they have all committed their futures to the ACC. Every single member, including Notre Dame, has committed their futures to the ACC under the grant of rights that doesn't expire until 2036, I believe, is the year. It's a long time from now. I'll be well retired by the time that grant of rights expires. Let's put it that way. So that matters, because if I am this past spring, Florida State and Clemson, especially Florida State, did a little bit of sort of empty threatening their league because they wanted a new structure on payouts, on revenue payouts from college football playoff appearances, bowl appearances, that sort of thing. So they sort of did some empty threats that they'd go to court and all that. But at the end of the day, there wasn't anything they could get out of doing that beyond the changed revenue sharing. They were never a threat to leave the conference, because if they leave the conference, if I'm Florida State and I leave the ACC, first of all, there's nowhere for me to go. The fallacy that, oh my goodness, the SEC just can't wait to get Florida State and Clemson. Why? Neither of them would do anything for the SEC other than give them 2 more bodies. It doesn't change anything. SEC's already in the Florida market. The Florida Gators do not want Miami or Florida State in their league. Why would they? Same in South Carolina. If I'm South Carolina, why would I ever want Clemson to be in my league? I don't want that. It would damage me. And are they going to bring so many more viewers that I'm going to make way more money? This is not UCLA and USC changing the chemistry of the Big Ten to make it more lucrative. It's just more bodies. And more bodies can't just you don't want to expand for more bodies if they can just pay for themselves, which is a trick in itself. I don't think that there's anybody out there other than maybe Carolina that could even do that. But the only reason you want to open the door is because they can make you richer. And these programs can't. So that's the first obstacle. But then if you can get over that and you can get the SEC to take you, then you know what? From now until 2036, every check the SEC writes to you goes to the ACC. That's how the grant of rights works. Every single check. SEC says, okay, here's $10 million for Florida State. Puts it in that automatic deposit, and it goes right through the account to the ACC. That's how it works with the grant of rights. So this idea that they're going anywhere, there's nowhere for them to go, and 2, there's no way for them to get there because they can't leave the money behind. So the ACC will be with us for a long time. The chemistry will change on the payouts. Let's say the figure that I've used for the Big Ten, and I don't think this is 100% accurate, but it's ballpark, $70 million annually that they'll get. The ACC will get, I think, around 40. So that $30 million difference, okay, so the Big Ten can build another building and you can't. But you can't, as long as the players are not paid by the schools, they can't buy better players that way. So they have to, they can maybe sponsor another sport or pay their lacrosse coach more money or whatever, maybe hire another strength coach, but there's only so much they can do with that money. That Big Ten money has not made a powerhouse out of every Big Ten football program. It has not. And it's always been better than what they've gotten in the ACC or the Big 12. It's always been better. Now it will be probably more better, as Spike Lee would say. It might be more better, but it's not, it's not going to make Vanderbilt better than Clemson to have more money. If players are paid employees, that could change. But we're several years minimum away from that.
Indiana is not, Indiana's football program is going to be what it is. It's not going to have, they're going to make substantially more money as a school with the Big Ten's media rights as it continues to grow with the addition of UCLA and USC. As this changes, I think it can climb up to over $100 million a year, which is expected once they have these teams. And the difference between the Big Ten and say the SEC is the Big Ten has geared in on TV markets, as well as just adding teams by adding the Los Angeles TV market, already having New York and Chicago and Washington, D.C. The SEC is, for lack of a better word, landlocked as far as their markets go, and adding because they're not looking to add outside of their footprint, so to speak. So are they limiting themselves in that regard?
Well, I mean, if there was something out there that would change the chemistry, I'm not sure they wouldn't be open to it. Texas and Oklahoma was a significant change for them geographically. They were already at Texas A&M, but Texas A&M's kind of not far from LSU. So this is a significant change for them geographically. Let's say we magically turned Washington Huskies into this football power that millions and trillions of people want to watch and all that. I don't think the SEC would be averse necessarily to adding Washington. The way they're locked is in the availability of programs that would change their chemistry. They're not out there. As I said, about the only thing that's even close is Carolina. North Carolina is a growing state. The Tar Heels have a really good following in state. it's probably an attractive school for either the Big Ten or the SEC. But there's no great impetus to do that again, because I don't know that Carolina is necessarily all that interested in being a different league as it stands now. And they're committed to the ACC financially until 2036. People in my business talk about these grants of rights as if they are like trading baseball cards. Like that's the significance of the contract. Well, let me tell you something. Texas and Oklahoma joined the SEC 2 summers ago. How many games have they played in the SEC so far? Why do you think that is? Because it's not easy to get out of one of those contracts, because you signed it willingly. It's not that easy to get out of it. So you can, like, Notre Dame could afford, probably, if they wished, to buy themselves out of their grant of rights, because it doesn't include football. So the payouts are smaller. Notre Dame has a lot of money. They could afford to buy themselves out of their grant of rights in the ACC if they wanted. But you can't do that if you're Clemson or Florida State, because the football money's included and you don't have that much money. You just don't. So it's not going to happen. And when we talk about Notre Dame, I've said this many times, I don't understand their commitment to independence, but they are committed to independence, and that's not changing.
No, and I don't understand it either, because it gets to a point to where, how are you helping yourself? What is your independence getting you? It's not getting you more money. It's not getting better resources for the other programs in your school. So I don't know what it does for them. Everything used to be based around football. Well, they don't really need that anymore. But I don't see what
there's something about it. The tradition that they love about it. I don't get it. I mean, you can't win a conference championship as an independent. So I don't know. I know that sounds really quite obvious, but there's only so much that you can win at that point if you remain independent. And I've never been able to understand even who is making that call totally. There are very powerful influences at Notre Dame that believe in that. But my point is that they could be in whatever league they want to be in, and they are in the league they want to be in. I mean, they are in the ACC as an affiliate member or whatever you call it, because that's what they want. And that's not changing anytime soon, no matter how many times people in my business try to get you to read their articles about why Notre Dame's going to change leagues. It's never changed. They've never moved an inch off of their belief that independence is right for them. And
they won't until the right dollar's approached. I mean, at some point, I think that there's some point I think that they have to say, okay, we have to look at this.
They don't necessarily, though. Okay, right now they are in a negotiation with NBC to re-up or because their contract's going to expire. I think the football contract is going to expire, I think, at the end of next year, if I remember right. So they need a new contract. And if they get the right dollar figure from that contract, they can say, we're good. And it's funny because all the articles that I've read about this said they're probably going to get the money they want. But what if they don't? It's like, because what draws you in is that what if they're out there and the SEC and Big Ten can fight over them? That's what draws you in. But the reality is the market's probably going to bear, based on what it did for the SEC and what it did for the eyeballs that the Big Ten draws and therefore generated X number of dollars. Notre Dame's television property has been pretty reliable. Now, it's been better when the games have been better. So if they play more SEC schools or more Big Ten schools, they can ask for more money and say, look at the numbers we're generating for you. You know, if we give you a Notre Dame Michigan game, man, cha-ching, cha-ching, look at the numbers. They can do that, but they don't necessarily have to join a league in order to get those. I mean, there are programs. Ohio State played them last year. That was a big TV game. I know that Michigan State, I believe, is on their schedule for the future. They've got some Big Ten games that are going to draw some viewers for whoever airs the games, and it'll probably end up being NBC, and they'll probably pay the number that Notre Dame, more or less the number that Notre Dame wants, and they'll remain an independent.
What is it about Notre Dame still today that Notre Dame football that makes this available to them? Because Lou Holtz and Tim Brown are not walking through that door. And I get it back then, but that's just not the case anymore. And they're just not what they were.
Well, they may not be what they were, but they still are relevant, and they still have a tremendous fan following. The Dallas Cowboys haven't been in the Super Bowl since, I think, 1995. I mean, I think it's been that long. I'm pretty sure that's the right, but they're still the Cowboys. You look at the games that draw the biggest audiences on network TV, whether it's Fox or CBS or NBC, whoever, ABC with the Monday night, Amazon, whoever's showing the game, at the end of the day, the Cowboys are going to draw a big number. And they haven't been the Cowboys for, almost 30 years. So Notre Dame still has had some really successful teams. They were in the playoff in, I believe, 2019. They had that undefeated season and then got waxed in the BCS championship game by Alabama. I think that was 2012. Please forgive me my historical knowledge of college football. If I remember 1974 a lot better in college football than 2012, to be honest. It's because it's not as big a part of my job, but it's still they've still had some very good football teams and some very good football players, and they have great hope to continue to perform well now that Brian Kelly's gone. So we'll see. But I do think that they have continued to maintain a large fan following that is, and maybe even more important than anything, there's no geographic tie to it. It goes from Maine down to San Diego and from Miami up to Seattle. There are fans of Notre Dame in all those places.
What's up next for you, Mike?
Women's World Cup starts Friday. The U.S. versus Vietnam. I'll have a story every day this week in advance of the tournament. Started with Julie Ertz and her importance to the national team trying to win a third consecutive World Cup. Remember, no team has ever won 3 consecutive World Cups, men's or women's. No team. If the U.S. can do it, I think there will be 5 members of this team that will have won a third World Cup. I think the number is 5. Ertz would be one. I'm pretty sure I did the research on this. I'm pretty sure the only man who's ever done it is a guy named Pele. So it's not like they're trying to join an exclusive club or anything.
Pele, I think I've heard of him. Mike DeCourcy with the sporting news. I can't thank you enough as always, man. I look forward to seeing you each and every week.
See you next week, Jim.
You bet. Mike DeCourcy joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. We've got lots more coming up. We'll be back with it right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Whether it's
I think I'm switching back to my Keurig coffee maker.
Yeah.
I waste a lot of coffee when
you do a full pot.
Yeah. Well, I don't do a full pot. Even if I do less than that, I just end up wasting.
I just feel like Keurig, the K-Cups are expensive. Maybe I'm wrong, but
well, see, I don't even have the stupid K. I got the View, which was a different one. It was supposed to have been the new thing that came out, and then it never caught on. So I just have a filter that I fill it up.
Oh yeah.
Born in the USA. I was born in the USA.
Here's an interesting point. Imagine if the all the Power 5 teams quit scheduling Notre Dame because of the TV stuff and the amount of conference games they already have to play. That's what's keeping them afloat. They can still play good games.
Yep.
At least that's a factor.
A factor.
I can't wait for college football. But it's that time of year when everybody has hope. You slowly lose it as you lose. Only one team will rise to the top. I can't think of who says that. Is that Macho Man Randy Savage? The cream of the crop. All right, 20 seconds.
Prepping and can even deliver them to your doorstep once a week. That's right, it's the fastest, simplest, and easiest way to avoid decision fatigue. You pick your plan and pick up at BB's Market with no extra charge. So leave the heavy lifting to us and enjoy healthy eating with stocked meals in your fridge. Order online today at thefreshfork.com. Fresh Fork is a proud partner of WOW Network. This segment is brought to you by Feast Market and Cellar. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Tuesday, July 18th. Thanks a lot for being with us. Just finished up with Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News. Earlier this week, Flory Badunga cut his list of schools that he is still considering, and Indiana no longer on that list, which is, I'd like to see more people do this, to be honest with you. If you know that there's someone who has put a lot of effort into you, but you're not going to go there, cut him. Cut him. He's not going anywhere other than Duke. But his final four: Auburn, Duke, Kansas, and Michigan. Indiana can move on for. Indiana now looking at Derek Queen, five-star big man Patrick Ngamba. Derek Queen, of course, goes to Montverde, where Indiana has done well with Jalen Chifino and Malik Renew. Liam McNeely, deep into the recruiting fold as well, attends Montverde. We'll see how that turns out for Indiana in the 2024 class. Badunga will announce his decision before the start of his senior season here soon. Kokomo, Indiana player. Badunga took official visits to Duke, Kansas, and Michigan this summer. So we'll see. He's going to end up at Duke, of course. He's mentioned that as his favorite, so that would be a surprise for that to be anything other than that. SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey, of course, we've talked a lot about him as the SEC just finished up their media days. Big Ten football media days coming up next week, the 25th and 26th from Lucas Oil Stadium, which we will be there. But Commissioner Sankey continues to share his opinions on the lack of direction of NIL, which is just funny to me. The commissioner said that the current state of NIL is a race to the bottom at the state legislature level. When talking about the effect different state NIL laws are having on college athletic, there should not be state laws. You can't have various state laws doing this, man. You're not having the same. I agree that there has to be national legislation on this if you're going to have legislation. In June, Sankey was in Washington, D.C. to speak to federal lawmakers about paths to federal laws to help equal NIL laws across the country. Texas recently introduced a state law that prevents the NCAA from enforcing their own rules and allows schools to help facilitate NIL deals. That's why right there. You've already have a state that's looking out for its schools rather than the body as a whole. That's not going to work, people. That's not going to work. Where do they end up? It's going to be interesting to see. Missouri has also introduced changes to state laws that allow coaches to help negotiate athlete NIL agreements with athletes and organizations. That is currently not allowed by the NCAA. So why are states purposely doing this? All they're doing is muddying the waters. All they're doing is making it worse. Fans complain that you don't like this and you don't like that. Well, these are your lawmakers that you have put into place. You have elected these people, and they're making this worse. Why? I don't know. Well, I do know. It's a way of getting attention for one thing. Whether congressional action is achievable is a matter for debate. Much debate, Sankey said. These are nonpartisan issues that deserve a nonpartisan solution. We have a responsibility to seek a congressional resolution. Only Congress can adequately solve these issues. Well, that's going to be correct because you're going to have 50 different laws in place. And right now, what can the NCAA do? Are they going to kick, okay, Missouri, well, you're not eligible for NCAA tournaments then. I mean, they're only going to make it worse for themselves, making it worse for the schools, making it worse for the student athletes. I don't understand the reason for that. There's not a reason for it. It's just people not working together. How's it going to end up? We'll see. I think that there's no way that eventually Congress does not do something, but unless you're in a state that it matters, I'm surprised that some of these southern states haven't pushed the envelope a little bit with help from these big schools. I mean, these are big time businesses, these football programs, SEC football programs. So I'm surprised there hasn't been a little bit of more of a push from within. And I'm surprised that Sankey has not been able to get that done in some sort of fashion.
We'll see how that turns out. But what the fans are always complaining. What are your thoughts? Why not? How can you not have something guiding that when you're getting states involved now that are making their own rules? And it's just going to muddle the waters. It's going to make it worse. So I don't know, like Missouri, what the hell? Why are you going to purposely inject a law that goes against the very rule that's in place for the NCAA and the rest of the country? Why? I'd love to know the necessity for that. What's the reasoning? Why is this better for Missouri than the other 49 states in the country? Yes, I agree, Taterology. The NCAA should deem these schools ineligible from NCAA competition. Easy to do. They've done it before with states that do things that are not copacetic. Oh, well, we're not going to have any tournaments in your state. And they can do that. But you watch the first time they try to regulate a school that way, well, we're going to sue you. So, more muddles, more muddied waters, muddled or muddied. It's muddied, not muddled. You muddle a drink.
There you go.
Which it's kind of the same thing. Muddling is muddle. Muddling is muddling, right? Muddle.
But middling. Middling something too? No.
Muddling is muddying. You kind of muddying. You're trying to muddy something when you muddle it. See, now you get into that thing where you say a word too many times and you can't say it anymore. Hey, Michael pointed out the Reds didn't lose last night.
Yeah, that's legitimate. I'm sure you talked about this yesterday.
They get rained out?
No, but absolutely worst case scenario happened to the Reds right out of the All-Star break. I cannot believe you get swept by the Brewers.
Not surprising.
I mean, I guess in the grand scheme of things, it's not surprising, but you have all that momentum, and the last thing you can do, or I guess the last thing you want to do to lose that momentum happened. And now you got to climb your way back up and at the very least hope you can stay in the wild card hunt.
Yep, the game was suspended last night, tied at 2. Picks up today, later on today, as Cincinnati hosting the Giants of San Francisco. So where are they now? 3 games back?
I haven't looked at the standings today, but you could be correct. It's close to that.
I am exactly not correct. They're 2 games back.
Okay.
Well, that's with that game yesterday, though.
Man.
But I talked about this before. You run differential. It's shocking to me. The only division in all of baseball, including the American League Central, whose leader is in the negative in run differential. And not only is Milwaukee, who's now leading the division, still in the negative, the second place Reds are also in the negative. If it wasn't for the Cubs, every team in the division would be in the negative in the run differential. That's next to impossible. Somebody has to win. But you want to talk about the utter stroke of mediocrity. Holy smokes. The National League Central is it. The Reds are
6 games above 500. They've gone 5-5 in their last 10 games. Again, the epitome of mediocrity.
Right.
Well, Milwaukee has gone 7-3 and just enough for that 2-game bulge. We've got more coming up. Chronic Hoosier's going to join us here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Back with that and much more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
If you're in the market.
Well, I was about to bring him in, but he dropped out right when I hit the break button. So I'm sure he'll be back.
I'm sure he will.
How's it going, Chronic?
It's going, man. How is it?
We're doing well. We're doing well.
It's my weekly fight to see whether my Wi-Fi or my cell signal is stronger than this today. We'll see which one holds on here for us. I missed that. Watch a second.
1 minute, Jimbo. All right, I'm going to bring us back.
Hospitality's Wild Club is located next door to Southern Stone Restaurant on Patterson and Rogers. It's one of the most popular gathering spots in Bloomington. Whether you're out on a date with your spouse, friends, or coworkers, Feast Market and Cellar offers an extensive wine selection with a sommelier on staff to help you with your selections. Feast also provides a wide variety of cheeses, gourmet sandwiches, entrees, a coffee bar, bread, pastries, all made fresh and mouthwatering. Stop by Feast Market and Cellar today.
This segment is brought to you by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Tuesday, July 18th. Thanks a lot for being with us. Joined now by Chronic Hoosier, brought to you by Andy Moore Honda. Don't forget, get more to your door with AndyMooreHonda.com. How's it going, my friend?
You know, just another day in paradise, and here exchanging stories of hail and wind from the evening past. Just a typical day in Indiana this summer.
I was just thinking, got pretty good storm all night. Lightning, thunder, and rain. It's got everything. The trilogy.
A little bit of hail, a little bit of wind damage. A buddy of mine here at work talking about his dock getting blown off its anchors last night out at Fairfax Marina. He's on a houseboat here during the week, and
really,
that got set adrift by the storm. Yeah, it was a pretty rowdy one, but pretty much on par for what we've seen so far this summer. It's been wild for sure.
Yeah, I didn't know it had gotten that testy.
I didn't either. It looked like as I was watching it, it was just kind of sitting over campus and the county line for most of the night last night. You know, we had blueberry-sized hail hitting every side of the house intermittently, but it just would not go away.
Absolutely. Well, that's what you get, right? You said it, par for the course. But always into each life, a little rain must fall.
Yeah, it's wild. You know, on a season when the grass was browning out in the end of May. Now it's like at a record pace in mid-July. Indiana's a little drunk this summer, but c'est la vie. You know, here we are talking about the weather and not anything untoward with the Hoosiers. So for off season, probably as good as you could hope for.
So what's new in Chronic's life?
You know, we are counting down the days. B-Town summer is fast drawing to a close here. I'm looking at the community school starting up here in about 2 weeks, and you know, on par for my family. We just found out last night my freshman's got a broken foot in 2 places, so he's on the pup list right now for the Bloomington South Panthers football. But that's second out of the last 3 years we've encountered a situation like that. So just dealing with it. Just getting ready for the recovery and the comeback.
Yeah, it's that time of year when school starts, the sports starts, and then the injuries start coming. No matter if you're volleyball, football, doesn't matter. It's cross country. There's always something to be iced down.
Oh yeah, activity starts ramping up. You know, you're working on conditioning, and lo and behold, injuries start popping up. It's something that all programs have to deal with. You know, not the least of which the Bloomington South freshman team. But you see it across the country at all levels, and it's one of those things where you just kind of hold your breath, cross your fingers, and you know, if you're Indiana, hope that none of your key guys end up taking those knocks that cost them some of this vital time. Because this is really when the magic happens, when teams are built. Obviously, you know, you've got to have availability of your guys, and as everybody's back on campus for the most part now, doing their camp stuff, doing their conditioning stuff, you know, you got to get bigger, stronger, faster, but more important than anything, you got to stay healthy.
Absolutely. Football season coming around, like you said, slowly. We've got the Big Ten football media days happening next week, the 25th and 26th, up at Lucas Oil Stadium. So that's kind of, I think everybody else has already had their media days. ACC, SEC just wrapped up. I know the Big 12 just did in Dallas. So the Big Ten will be kind of the last of the big boys to get through that period. That's coming up next week, which is kind of the almost official. I don't want to call it the official end of summer, but it kind of is in my mind.
No, it absolutely is. I mean, this is when things really start ramping up in earnest. When the camps come in full session. You know, right now it's quote unquote involuntary workouts and whatnot. But make no mistake, those guys are putting in the work right now with the staffs, with the trainers, the conditioners, getting their bodies ready for the season. And you know, once you get past media days, you're pretty much barreling towards that opening kickoff. Still got about 6 weeks left. But this is when the teams are truly built, you know, in the most fundamental sense. And you know, for a team like Indiana, it's absolutely imperative that they get it right this year, because there's what I expect to be an increasingly hot seat in Memorial Stadium, and Lord knows, schedule doesn't do them a whole lot of favors this year once the conference season starts up. So it's going to take some development. You know, we've been a lot of movement on both sides of the football, on the bench as well as in the box, and they've only got so much time to figure out what they've got and how to get it right here, and hopefully show some improvements from last season.
I do have to say, I don't like to talk badly about the football program, because the football program has kind of been handcuffed by the school for a long, long time. So they're always starting with one hand behind their back. But now as football continues to be so important in college athletics, Indiana has to do something at some point, you think. And I'm not blaming this on Tom Allen. I'm not even talking about Tom Allen. I'm talking about Indiana football, period. It stinks. It's always stunk. for the most part. But that falls back on Indiana to do something about that.
You know, I will half-heartedly agree with that. You know, as we've seen in the last decade,
and I half-heartedly support it. So
as we've seen in the last decade, you know, there is some modicum of success that's possible for a program like Indiana. Obviously, it's going to be extraordinarily challenging, just with the circumstances of the conference, the divisions, and everything else, geographical challenges, just with the number of major programs surrounding Indiana and the recruiting pool they all draw from. But at the end of the day, you know, we've seen a team that can regularly become bowl eligible. We've seen a team that has shown it's capable of competing with some of the best in the league, and we've also seen just how fleeting that success can be. And I think that's the paradox of Indiana football. Is, you know, for decades fans have clung to the belief that, you know, if you do the right things, if you make the right moves, if you make the right investments, the right hires, you can improve your stars. And we've seen that recently, but we've also seen how quickly that can slip away, you know, whether it be a couple of key positions or even coordinators or staff members. You've got to have the right pieces in place in order to compete. And it's such a precarious position for a program like Indiana. But they've, you know, fans have tasted that success as recently as 2020. And just how quickly it arrived, it's completely disappeared. So I think the key this year is, you know, finding some way to get back to being competitive on a week in, week out basis. Try to steal some wins when you can. Definitely win the games you're favored. But more than anything, play with some respectability, you know, and the challenge for Indiana is we've seen them on the cusp, and then one or two key injuries, and all of a sudden the sky's falling on them. You got to get past that, and that's talent, and that's depth of talent. And you know, we've seen a lot of movement with the portal era and everything else. Show me what you got. Show me how you can develop what you've got, and show me how you can get better as the season goes on. And I think that's going to be my keys heading into this season. I don't know that there's a magic number that you have to reach in order to consider it a success. But I think for most people, the eye test tells you whether or not they're fielding a competitive football team. And quite frankly, in the last couple of years, they've just fallen too short of that baseline goal.
Yeah, and not knowing, I think, is driven fans as crazy as anything, because they know nothing about the team going into each year, year after year. It's been the same thing. Not going to name a quarterback. After so long, that starts to just grate on people. It's like, you know what? We're tired of this game. That game has just run its course, and it has run its course. And not knowing what the team has it's not acceptable at this stage. You're too far in to the program to there be complete unknowns and not know what the expectations are.
Yeah, you know, we talk a lot in the basketball world how important continuity can be from season to season. And that's something Indiana football in particular, has really struggled with, because you just don't know. There's not that standard maturation process where once guys become juniors and seniors, you fully expect them to be ready to start competing for the starting positions, because quite frankly, either those guys aren't sticking around, or they've just not shown anything in those years leading up to that make you believe that they're going to be ready for that. And it all goes back to recruiting at the end of the day. You know, Kevin Wilson, for all his faults, had shown just how imperative it is to upgrade your talent. And you saw that reflected not just in the star rankings that the recruits were coming in with, but look at the way they leave the program. Look at the number of guys that found themselves on the draft boards, you know, that found themselves getting free agent contracts after they left the program going undrafted. You've got to be able to develop the talent that you have. At the same time, you've got to be able to improve the talent, both through recruiting and transfer. So, you know, the situation now is you've got so many open bodies, or so many open spots, and new bodies come in. You really have no idea what to expect, because while the talent's going to be supremely important, eventually you've got to find a cohesive unit that's capable of playing together and for each other. And we saw that in the past as the program was ascendant. And you know, Tom Allen and his staff are going to have to find a way to get that sense of brotherhood back. on the field, at least in how it reflects in the way that they're playing for each other and competing. Because quite honestly, too often they fail to compete.
And the resurgence of men's basketball, although they have not won anything yet, they are more than competitive right now, having finished a game short of the Big Ten championship last year, making the NCAA tournament. The rise of women's basketball to a level unexpected, that probably doesn't help football as much as people would think that it would.
In Indiana, it's one of those things where I feel like the fans are so apathetic. Sometimes they point to other programs that are successful on campus and say, why can't you be like that? Well, there's a lot of reasons why, but not the least of which is you've got to have the right staff, and that's not just the head coach. That's everybody all the way down the line to the trainers and the managers. But you've got to be able to build a talent that's not just competitive, but that also fits your culture. And I think you look at IU women's basketball and just what a tremendous example Terry Moran set for doing all those things, putting the right staff in place, the right players in place, but more importantly, building the culture so that continues no matter how much the roster turns over. Because you look at all the star players that have come through there only to be replaced by a better squad that comes in following them. That's the progression that you've got to be able to demonstrate. And obviously you've got programs like Indiana basketball that have historically had great success. But look at IU swimming and IU soccer, truly the gold standard when it comes to what a program culture should look like and how sustainable it is when those right pieces are in place and the culture is real.
And having successful programs like men's basketball, women's basketball, soccer, baseball, whatever the case it is, swimming, diving. It would be great if the football program could just not suck. I mean, and that's terrible to say, but it's the truth. If they could just not suck, it would probably be acceptable and very much more palatable by people, but they just can't seem to get to that level anymore.
No,
they did under Bill Mallory.
Yeah, no, they like I said, they have tasted it sporadically over the course of my lifetime. Mainly in the Mallory years, followed by the end of the Kevin Wilson into the beginning of the Tom Allen era. But they've been so brief and so punctuated by just the despondency of those other seasons that that's probably Indiana's biggest enemy on every schedule. It's just apathy, quite honestly, and that's a dangerous place to be. This is the time of year when hope should be abound everywhere around the program and especially in your fan base. But as we've seen in too many years past, people will show up when the weather is nice, but come mid-October when things start to turn and the schedule starts to sour a little bit, that support tends to fizzle. And it's unfortunate because we've seen what decent football, not great football, but what decent football can do to energize a community and a campus. And you got to get back to that, and you got to do it soon, because in this day and age of conference realignment and everything else, you don't want to be the bottom of the totem pole as things are getting shuffled out, because at the end of the day, football and the television and the eyes that it draws is really what makes the world go round in college athletics. No matter how great your basketball program is, football's where the dollars are. That's where those big TV contracts come from. And if you want to be a player in that conversation, you've got to have something to offer. And, it's unfortunate because Indiana has second largest alumni base in the nation. As you see in all those December and November basketball games, they will bring eyeballs if you just give them something, just a modicum of interest in a program. Hoosiers will follow, and they'll travel, and they'll support. But that's something for IU football that they've only tasted briefly, and as we've seen, is awfully fleeting.
Absolutely. Men's basketball recruiting, just when we think it's over, and it still might be, with the open scholarship. Chris Liedlam, who Indiana chased last year for a while, ended up committing to Tennessee, but is now decommitted there and is back in the transfer portal. This is like the only the only thing I could see changing Indiana's roster because of all the situations coming together, being corrected, being a 1-year guy, a grad student, he can transfer anywhere, that being kind of a semi-position Indiana could use. But I don't know that I still don't know that they make a change or make an addition this late into the process now.
The first go around with Liedlam was certainly a matter of necessity. I think for both parties, Indiana needed front court depth. He needed a home to play in the front court. I think now, likely the reason he's back in the portal is probably the reason that Indiana is not going to be as serious in contention, simply because that need is far, far less now with the additions Indiana made to their front court in the interim. I think if Indiana were to fill that open spot right now, it's likely going to end up being a guard or a wing rather than a post player, just by necessity at this point. And I'm not sure that I'm not sure that the staff is still actively seeking to fill that. I'm sure their eyes are always open. I have no doubt about that. But my guess is the needs have changed enough that that ship's probably sailed for both parties, at least this go around.
And I would think so too. Like I said, if Indiana was in a dire need, but they're not, and there's just, you're kind of deep into the guys having played with each other now for probably 6 weeks into this, and your team is kind of set. Not that you can't make an addition, but that would say something to the team in essence as well. So there's a lot of variables that go into that.
No doubt. And, not the least of which is Indiana's a whole lot more apprised as far as what their assets and liabilities are at this point, simply by virtue of having those guys on campus, letting them get some run together and get a real sense, not a theoretical or on paper sense, but an actual sense of what the roster looks like, what the chemistry looks like and feels like, and where their needs are at this point. So, again, I don't know that front court is something they're prioritizing now, where that was certainly not the case, 6-8 weeks ago.
Absolutely. And now that Indiana seems to be set as far as a roster, but again, never say never. But looking forward to next year, people seem to be happy with what they have. Flory Badunga, of course, taking Indiana off of their list for next year. That disappointed some people, but you shouldn't be surprised by that. It's not he's an in-state kid. He's not really an in-state kid.
I've said for a while, Indiana has had a tough road up 69 north of Indianapolis. That corridor has been pretty fickle for Indiana recruiting for many, many years. And I'm not specifically referencing anything with this particular recruitment. It's just been a situation where some of those loyalties, some of those ties don't run quite as deep as they do to the other parts of the state. All that said, though, I think Indiana is still in the mix. With Derek Queen's
Queen.
His ascension in Indiana's heightened interest in his services. A lot of times these decisions are maybe not mutual agreement, but mutually understood as far as where the attention shifted and where the priorities lie. So, I know Indiana fans love to see every Indiana All-Star, every Indiana native receive priority. At the end of the day, this is a program that I think is acutely aware of what its needs are and where the interest lies in the recruits. So, unfortunate to see some of the best talent leave the state. But at the end of the day, as I've said on the shows past, get me the best talent available, period, regardless of where the diploma comes from.
Yeah, this is still Mike Woodson and staff. It's the 25 staff, the 25 class has seemed to be the class that they have had prioritized for a while because of relationships, and that goes right along with this. This was more about relationships, not saying anything bad about Indiana. It's just that there are outside of relationships here, and that's just how it's going to be. But also, Indiana is recruiting from outside of the state as well. So it's not like they're recruiting only kids from within the state.
No doubt. And I think you look at the level of interest, the visits that have been taken, that are currently scheduled or are being discussed to be put on the schedule. I'd say Indiana's recruiting at about as high of a level as you've seen in many, many years right now at the national level. So again, it's disappointing to some, but I think the fact that Indiana remains in the mix with so many top level uh, recruits right now, no reason to see any warning signs whatsoever. I've admittedly have withdrawn from following the recruiting news that actively for some time. I mean, I certainly got my eyes open, uh, but it's one of those things where for all the efforts and the energies and the resources we put into tracking uh, the whims of these teenagers, at the end of the day, show me who signs up, show me who wants to be here, show me who this staff is capable of landing from their priority list. And I think that's the thing. We've seen coaches in the past who every year, as soon as the recruiting period opened, would shotgun offers to, 80% of the top 50 in the country, and would settle for maybe one, two at best of those recruits to actually land. Uh, I'm totally fine with the staff that's a little more targeted, that's a little more active with those that they have targeted, and converts at a higher percentage, because that shows me a little more evidence of strategy and success rather than just a raw numbers game. But at the end of the day, give me the kids that want to be here above everything else. Give me the kids that want to fight, and show me the kids that are ready to compete when they get here. Because a lot of times, in this, especially at this level, when you're looking at these 5 stars, a lot of the promises made on the recruiting trail often lead to relationships broken once they arrive on campus. And if you can avoid some of those pitfalls in the process of staffing your roster, more power to you, because that's how those kids end up sticking around after the first year.
Absolutely. Hey, concert schedule coming up, man. Farm Aid coming back to Indianapolis in September. In addition to many other things, I know you're big on the concert trails when the kids allow it.
Yes, when the kids allow it. I think my concert schedule is closed for the season. At this point, we are full on to getting ready for back to school and whatnot, and we're eyeballing fall break at this point. I think second week of October is going to be the first chance that I really get a chance to get out and have a whole lot of fun, other than some tailgates here in between.
You know what? Indiana football needs to start doing concerts after football games.
I'd love it. Show me some the night before even. We've got some great venues on campus. A lot of kids looking for a good time. And I know there's lots of stuff that happens, around Showalter and whatnot. But man, I miss those days when you'd see more national acts come through Bloomington.
But seriously, they want to get people in that stadium. Start having concerts after games.
Hey, you're preaching to the choir here. I'd sign up for it tomorrow.
Crowley Hoosier, appreciate you.
Thanks for having me, Jim. Catch you next week.
You betcha. Back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Whether
I'm hungry. I'm hungry.
Got 1 minute. All right, here we go.
At the corner of Patterson and Rogers in Bloomington offers a variety of freshly made fare, tying their roots in Limestone with their love of Southern eateries. With quality, local, and organic food as their main focus, Southern Stone strives to always provide their guests with an exceptional dining experience. With weekly specials, quick, attentive service, Southern Stone Restaurant provides delicious, 5-star comfort food with a Southern charm at 2-star prices. Southern Stone Restaurant is part of Endeavor Hospitality's Wow Club.
This segment is brought to you by Courtroom Sports Grill in Bedford. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Tuesday, July 18th. Thanks a lot for being with us. 2 days from now, Never Lose Hoop golf outing takes place at the Golf Club at Eagle Point, supporting the Hulls Foundation. Make sure if you haven't signed up, you can do so. Come out and participate in that. Shotgun start at noon. Looking forward to that. Next week, Big Ten Football Media Days, 25th and 26th from Lucas Oil Stadium. We'll be there. Dustin Schutte will be with me both days. Looking forward to that. Looking at Tom Crean's tweet to parents, conversation starters with your kids after practice, training, or workouts. Number one, what did you think you got better at today? Just 1%. Remember, 1%. Number two, what different things do you do for footwork? Number three, how do they help you stay low in a stance? Number four, how do you feel you're getting quicker? Maybe I should start doing that for the show. Do a little footwork. Footwork, John. Footwork.
Yeah, give everybody your exercise tips.
Footwork. Always good to do footwork, especially for golf. My golf game stinks. Footwork's not going to help. Not much will help. I need to get out and play a practice round at the Golf Club at Eagle Point. The Truth popping on. Hope everybody's doing well today. What, as we're in these dog days of sports summer, what do you look forward to now? What are you waiting on? As we are in that lull period, we still have the Little League World Series coming up to look forward to. July is kind of a vacation month for a lot of people. When do most people go on vacation? Families.
I definitely think that the most popular week for vacations is the week of 4th of July. It's typically the heaviest traveled time of the year for those kinds of things. But I think you're right about July. The month of July as a whole. Probably the most popular vacation month out of the year. I mean, it's the hottest month of the year. It's the time to be in the water, time to be at the lake, the time to be at the beach. Makes sense.
Son of a beach.
That's right. Son of a beach.
Absolutely. Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of beaches.
Do you have a favorite beach?
No.
Like vacation destination?
Yeah, plenty that I haven't.
To?
Oh, that I've been to. I was going to say there are plenty that I haven't been to.
My wife and I are already planning vacations for next year. It's typically, I think that's a common thing to do. Once you finish up your vacation schedule, the mind begins to drift toward the next year.
It is if you're married.
That's true.
Because you don't have a choice, because your wife is going to say, hey, let's start planning, because planning
but it's me. This is me that's doing the planning, though.
Well, apparently you're married to a good woman, or she's married to a good woman.
I love planning trips, though.
Hey, that's the best way to do it. I'm not making fun. Trust me. There's probably some jealousy there of not being. I'm always going, and all of a sudden, boom, my head hits something, and I look up like, oh, it's Christmas. It's thanks. It's like, oh man, it's Thanksgiving tomorrow. Daggone it. Yeah, that's kind of that's not the way to do it. Not the best way to do it, at least. Planning is always much better. Much better. Speaking of planning, what do we got coming up tomorrow?
See, tomorrow's Wednesday. We should have.
It is.
Is JD Campbell back on Wednesday, or is he coming on a different day this week?
I don't know. We haven't.
Well, we may have JD Campbell. We may not. But
we may have to talk to him about that.
Kyle Nedenrip and our friend Rick Bozich.
Yeah, you can always get him to switch with, say, Dustin Schutte.
Maybe Schutte would be more apt to do that now that he's settled in Brownsburg. Maybe he'll be available to come on tomorrow. We'll have to see.
He'll be on next Wednesday and Thursday, as we will be coming to you from Lucas Oil Stadium for Big Ten Football Media Days next week. I'm looking forward to it, but I'm not.
I know. It seems like every year, and maybe it just has to do with
it's too early.
Line. Well, we say that, but yet the Big Ten is the last major conference to have their media days.
I know. It's still too early. Too early. I mean, it's 6 weeks out. Maybe just 5, I guess. A month is far enough in advance for me. I don't need 5-6 weeks.
It will be about a week from. So I mean, if we're talking, because week 0 begins the week of August 26th, and next Wednesday is July 26th. So, and I know Indiana's not playing in week 0, but if we're talking about just the beginning of college football, Big Ten Media Days will be exactly a month out.
Well, there you go. So you get that, which is nice. But the thing is, it would be a lot nicer if it was a sport that everyone was anticipating. It'll be a little bit more fun when it's we're a month out from basketball. I'm not going to lie to you. Just from the excitement period. But that's part of the problem I talked about a minute ago. There's no expectations right now. You know why? Because we know nothing. Who's the quarterback? Who's the starting quarterback for Indiana?
I don't know who it is, but I can tell you one thing. If it's, and I'm probably said this before, if it's not Taven Jackson, you're already off to a bad start.
Why?
Because Taven Jackson, even though he's a young guy and he's unproven, he absolutely has the most upside and the most potential of anybody else in that quarterback room.
I bet
he's the youngest guy. He was highly touted coming out of high school. He did great during his years at Cedar Grove. And I absolutely think that you have to go with him, even though he's young, because if you can make strides with him this year and you take those baby steps toward improvement, you're not going to see, and I could be wrong about this, you're not going to see somebody like him jump back in the transfer portal because he's already used that one-time transfer. If he left Indiana again after having some sort of success, he would have to sit out a year, granted getting some sort of NCAA waiver. So you're going to have this guy in your program for quite a while, barring something significant happening. So you want to develop him while you have him young and fresh, and he could potentially be your guy for the long run if things work out.
I'll bet you he's not the starting quarterback.
Go ahead and tell me why, because I'd love to hear why. You are more apt to know something that I wouldn't.
I just don't think he is going to be the starting quarterback.
Do you know, or not know, but do you have an idea of who you think it would be?
Yes.
And who would that be?
I'm not going to say yet.
Okay. Does that mean you know who it is and that it just can't be known? And that, if that's the case, that's fine.
No, because I don't think that decision has been made. But I think that I know who it's going to be.
I hope
and
it's
I
not.
and I disagree with you that it will be who you think it is.
Well, and I figured you didn't think it was Taven. And I am curious if you would like to share why you don't think it will be him.
It's nothing to do with Taven. I just think that I don't think that he's there yet.
Oh, I agree with you there, but I don't know that anybody in that quarterback room is there yet. And that's why I said, like, even though this is the youngest guy, at least in terms of your guys who are likely to be starters, I mean, I think you go with the youngest, the guy with the best upside, as I said earlier. And that's the reason I would go with him. But I'm not the one making the decisions. That's why they don't pay me the money.
Well, also, neither of us are in practice at the moment. Neither of us are in camp. Neither of us have seen who's doing what with the opportunity that they are getting. I will see. We've got plenty of time for that discussion. Yes, we'll wait till we get closer for it. But
we've got a couple minutes still. Do we know who Indiana is sending to media days? Have they released that information?
Good question, but no,
Okay.
not to my knowledge, but we'll find out. We'll be there, and we'll hope to have all of them on, including Tom Allen, maybe also Scott Dolson usually is there. We'll see if we can get Scott on, and whomever we can get while we're up there. We hopefully it'll having Dustin there will help out a little bit.
Oh, Dustin, and we know he loves to ask people what their favorite food is, what their favorite
ice cream concert.
I look forward to all those questions. I love the Dustin Shooty.
The angle.
Goes out.
Well, we'll get to it, and we'll get to it in a couple of days when he joins us again. But tomorrow on the program, like you said, we'll see if JD is going to be with us. Not sure about that one, but Kyle Nedenrip, Rick Bozich, see what else we can get scaried up. And what happens today? Hopefully the Reds can get back on the winning side as they continue that game with San Francisco today after losing 3 straight to Milwaukee. Man, I can't thank everybody enough. Thanks to Chronic Hoosier. Thanks to Mike DeCourcy, John, the producer. Most importantly, thanks to you guys. Without you, we have no reason to be here. But we're back tomorrow to do it again. Until then, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.